Hi, everyone. My name is Caroline Withrow. I am definitely doing this project with Lauren Mall. We did Chapter 7, Instruction, the Disposition to be Facilitative by Sarah Chapman. And I have my handy-dandy highlighted book right here. So let's go ahead and get the screen shared. And present. I've done this 3 times, so my face will go away here, and then I come back. So let's do this. All right, Chapter 7. So I'm going to start out by a quote at the very beginning. It says, "I like a teacher who gives you something to take home to think about besides the homework." So what we're going to do is we're going to think about something that goes along with the chapter, but also kind of thinks about what kind of education you guys have had. So some key questions before we start. What is a facilitative disposition? What kind of education do you think you had when you were in junior high or middle school? Can you relate to Sarah Chapman's style of education? And what are some pros and cons of having a facilitative disposition in a middle school setting? A facilitative disposition described in the book says a teacher with a facilitative disposition to instruction is able to explore the required curriculum and help students learn to access and evaluate information while also guiding students active learning. And that's on page 84 of the It Factor, the third paragraph, well, really second paragraph down. And so learning can be involved in real-life meaning and critical thinking. This means that students who find, math or social studies and their least favorite with most teachers, they find when they have a more facilitative learning environment there, they participate more, they volunteer more, because the way the curriculum is distributed throughout is more quote unquote fun, and it's not being directed at them. And a big thing that Sarah talks about is when you remember someone, when you remember, your past school, you don't remember the day you learned cosine, all that fun stuff. I don't even remember that, to be honest with you. You remember the teachers you had, and how they acted towards you. And she says, my most memorable educational moments are not of teachers directing my learning, but they are teachers building relationships and effectively facilitating it. So a facilitative disposition is definitely where you build your relationships, where you can better educate your students. And this is definitely categorized as a responsive disposition. How do we relate? So Lauren and Sarah both have a little bit similar and a little bit opposite. Lauren, I am not teaching, so Lauren really has more relate to Sarah than I do. Lauren was taught opposite of her superintendent. The book says if you're not tired, you're not doing it right, which means you're working hard, you're getting the students involved. And Sarah and both Lauren kind of were like, whoa, taken back by it. Sarah Chapman said she was often aggravated by it, but it also promoted her to do more. And by token, if the students aren't tired and the teacher is, there's something not going right. And Lauren's superintendent taught her the kids should be tired, not you. So that kind of goes a little bit together of both Sarah and Lauren's thoughts. Lauren did create a facilitative project with the kids where the kids had to summarize paragraphs. And the kids really wanted Lauren to do it for them. And it wasn't, she just wanted bullet points, and that was really all she really required out of it. It's just a little bit more difficult. I truly believe in a facilitative learning environment. I think it's 100% necessary in the way things in our education system is moving forward. Critical thinking is needed in all new jobs that are had now and will be created in the future. Problem solving, working with others, really digging deeper into things to better see how they work. And Sarah says in the book, these careers require learning a process and producing an output, much like our education that was based on the factory system. So many students will have jobs that don't exist, and being able to teach them to effectively, independently learn new systems and technology, because they won't be in school forever. So it's definitely a really important thing that we start critically teaching now, have that critical thinking now, compared to them learning it when they're in college. And it's kind of a little bit too late. We both believe not doing work for the students. So when I taught at-risk youth, that was the biggest thing. If you're working harder for this youth's positive outcome than they are, then something's not right, and maybe it's not, what's best for them. And that's definitely a huge thing in teaching and students. If I'm working harder for you to get a good grade, this is not how you're going to get it. You need to work harder, and you need to critically think about what you want. The thing she talks about is that she doesn't, I don't have to know everything, but I do have to model how I figure things out. So that definitely talks about being open and honest with your students. And when she says, like, a question that she doesn't always know the answer to, I'm not sure, but we will figure it out. And so I think that definitely throws students off when we say, I don't know, but let's figure it out together. Important keys. We already talked about my memorable education moments are not of teachers directing my learnings. They are of teachers building relationships and facilitating it. This is really big because it talks about, building those relationships, keeping it strong, and having that strong facilitative disposition in your classroom. And allowing students to have memorable education moments with you. That way they are more likely to gain the information and really let it sink in and stay there. Giving students choices does not mean giving up control of the learning environment. And this is big because I feel like as new teachers, we don't want to be taken advantage of. Or if you guys are already teachers, I'm not yet. You don't want to be taken advantage of in your own classroom. And this is definitely an age where students will try to. Kids, I can say that I will push your buttons in a heartbeat. If you give me a choice, I'm going to stretch it. So this is definitely, and it goes with honest conversations and high expectations. By modeling expected behaviors and procedures, like if I act a certain way, I expect my students to act a certain way, and I'm open and honest with my students about something, I expect them to be open and honest with me. This definitely is important when it comes to group work, when it comes to honesty on projects and papers and all this stuff. And she quotes, "The students know what to do, so let them do it." So you don't have to constantly have to tell them what to do or constantly be checking in on them, because giving the students a sense of individuality and sense of self-responsibility is extremely important. And we talk about those in our developmental projects that we recently just did. If students feel their opinions are being heard, we can start building trust. Because students have a valid opinions too. It's not just teachers who are this, and this. This is how you do it. This is what you need to do. This is how we're going to, move on. If students feel like their opinions aren't being heard about the way they're educating, they're more likely to shut down. I feel as though students need us to be able to listen. And I think sometimes when life is so busy and the classroom is so much, it can just be more difficult. She talks about where did it go? Oh goodness, too love it when this happens. A lot of students don't feel comfortable with facilitative learning because of the cookie cutter styles they've had before those teachers, or even teachers are having then, that they're saying there's not enough information, there's not enough knowing what to do. They say it's too much work. and it just gets hard. So if they're able to really talk about it, I feel like with their teachers, that the teachers can really, instead of pushing them in deep end and like, here's a facilitative disposition, the teachers are more likely to help kind of integrate it in with them. So like she gives some examples of give one student time limits so he wouldn't obsess over choosing the perfect activities. Encourage the student to choose a variety of activities to challenge yourself rather than simply doing what was easiest. Emphasize that a student should choose what interests him rather than what his friends were doing. And listen to all of the students who were excited about ideas and plans they had and push them to go deeper. These were small like decisions that Sarah made to really give a facilitate the students' learning, which I think is a huge importance in the classroom. Collaboration makes a difference. This goes back to honest conversations and high expectations. You can't do every activity as a group project, but it's definitely important that we do promote collaboration within our students because it talks about a positive peer involvement and working with students in problem solving and discussing and content of the lessons that they're learning. This is important when going into the work field because you're not always going to work with people that you don't particularly like. I know I have. I can assume that you all have too. And I think it's really important that we as teachers also show collaboration. So if, we're talking about working in teams and the importance of working in teams in middle schools, this is huge. So if one teacher throws off the whole facilitative disposition because, the class may be more technical, it kind of throws off a little bit of the whole group as like teacher group as a whole. So it's really important for not only students to be able to work together in groups, but for the teachers as well. Sarah talks about this takes teachers who are responsibly disposed to cultivate collaboration, and it also talks about students needing to find their voice and learn how to share their ideas and opinions appropriately. So it goes back to being, in the developmental stage of students, that they're changing, they need to be heard, which gives a sense of individuality and teaches like appropriateness and psychological and moral development. So she also talks about technology can be a great tool. I know that kids now can do more with my phone than I can. I barely figured out how to record a video on my computer that I've had since the beginning of college. And this really gives goes back to the honest conversations and high expectations. We have high expectations set for our students, and we want them to use their technology in a more responsible way. And she found out that the biggest thing is these kids know how to use their phones, but they don't know how to appropriately put an appropriate subject line into their email, and it's not all correct. And then this goes back to facilitating collaboration. So that when they're using computers into the classroom and they're talking about talking about how to use it. This really goes to, talking about what they're using, talking about what they're looking for, using technology, and teaches them about lifelong learning. She uses them, and then she talks about how students kind of were like, whoa. And she also talks about, like, if she can't get a student to turn on because the power key is missing, at least one other student knows how to change it. So it really talks about students helping other students, which, promotes socio-emotional development. More of our old project. I think the best thing to talk about with this chapter is going back to the questions that I asked you. What is a facilitative disposition? We talked about that it able to explore the required curriculum and help students learn how to access and evaluate information while also guiding students active learning. We talked about the building relationships and really getting to know our students in the best way that they can learn. What kind of education do you think you had when you were junior high or middle school? I was in a middle school. We had teams, and I definitely remember the separation between my my facilitated disposition teachers, which were my English teachers and my science teachers, compared to my technical teachers, which was my social studies teacher and my math teacher. Two very different types of teachers mixed into one, and I thought it was both kind of weird that I always had that kind of separation, where I didn't have a whole team of facilitated disposition. I had more of a technical and responsive disposition style teachings. I can relate to this teacher style of education because I think it's the most important, and I think once I begin teaching, it will be how I implement my classroom. Teaching CT, culinary, I wanted to, food and nutrition and culinary arts and whatnot, and family and consumer sciences. It's important that we are able to think and do other processes and create work environments and collaboration environments that are positive for our kids. Pros and cons of having a facilitative disposition. I think the pros are you're creating a more developmentally sound child. I think you are creating an environment for a positive and effective education environment where you're also teaching them how to learn, be independent, and work well with others while promoting honest conversation and high expectations for oneself and your peer groups. I think cons is you're going to have definitely some pushback from kids who are used to these cookie cutter style classes. I think it might be difficult when you have other teachers who aren't as facilitative as you are, or if you're working in a system that may want to control more of the learning. I also think something that would be hard when having a facilitated disposition is when you are giving your kids choices, you have to really limit the choices, because you don't know, in the beginning unless you really trust your class. So that's chapter 7, guys. Thank you so much for powering through this video with me, and I look forward to watching all your videos, and I hope you guys have a great day and week, because I know this week was a lot.